Hey everyone, good evening and welcome to tonight's community climate conversation on modernizing our homes and buildings. I'm Brenda Harrington, project manager for the All of Belfast Climate Dialogues, the project of the Belfast Free Library. This is the third community climate conversation we've held in collaboration with the Belfast Climate Crisis Committee on topics that will inform the writing of a Belfast Climate Action Plan. And you can learn more about these past events on our website. You go to belfastlibrary.org and find ABCD events, and all the past events are listed there with links to the recordings and lots of information. We have two handouts tonight. And for those of you on Zoom, I will put a link in the chat to a web page where you can link to the handout on what Belfast has accomplished to date and a form for your input, because we would really enjoy everybody's input. So I'm joined tonight with my colleague from ABCD, Sarah Kirn, who will facilitate the conversation and introduce our speakers. And so now I will turn the mic over to Sarah Kirn. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Brenda Harrington. So welcome, everyone. So we're here again because climate change is real and it's important and it's an enormous threat, right? And we're also here together because being together in this and facing it together feels better. It's also the only way that we can actually do something that will make a difference. So thank you all for being here. We're talking about buildings today. And as usual, when we're talking about anything having to do with climate change, there are kind of climate change related metrics that we can focus on, and then a whole bunch of value add benefits that come along. So when we're talking about building efficiency, absolutely, it's important to think about how are we reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But it's also really important to remember that this is how we make our homes here in Maine warmer, cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer, and less costly, which is really important as we're looking at kind of sky-high energy prices. So we're thinking about all of that, and thinking about buildings and efficiency in buildings is an enormous topic. And we have 2 hours to scratch the surface. So think about this as the opening of a conversation. We're not going to come to all the answers, but hopefully we're going to generate some new ideas, hear new ideas from each other, and see where our collective interest lies. So as we're talking about this, as usual, we want to remember that we have some values that this group identified back in June as we're thinking about the climate action plan. So the values that were identified, and these are open to be edited as always, but the 3 values that folks have identified are a commitment to equity. So ensuring that nobody gets left behind by the need to make changes. So people who don't have a lot of extra income or a lot of extra money to tackle these things, we need to think about ways to make sure that they have access to new technology and more efficient homes to benefit them. We don't want to leave people behind. There's also a strong commitment expressed to balancing the needs of humans, so human infrastructure, human convenience with conservation and ecosystems. So not just saying hell with the environment, we need to have this work for human beings, but playing that in balance has been something that is really important to people who live in this area. And the third thing is remembering that Belfast is part of many systems. It's part of human systems. There are other organizations in Belfast and in the Waldo County and in the state of Maine who are thinking about how to serve and engage and support people. Likewise, Belfast is part of an ecosystem, and there's upstream from us and there's downstream from us. So we want to be thinking about how this conversation that we're having intersects with those other human and natural systems that we're part of. Any questions or additions or comments on those value statements? Super. So we are here to have a discussion and a conversation, and we will have that. And tonight we have two speakers who are so relevant to this conversation. We're making some extra time to hear from each of them. The first up, we have Ross Anthony, who's here with us from the Governor's Department. What is it? The Governor's Energy Office. Ross is the Buildings and Efficiency Analyst for the Maine Governor's Energy Office, and he's here to give us kind of frame the big picture, what's happening in the state of Maine and what new things are on deck, right?
Sounds great.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for being here.
You got it. All righty, let me just share my screen real quick. And can everyone see this okay?
Yep.
Perfect. Great. So my name is Ross Anthony. I am the Buildings and Energy Efficiency Analyst with the Maine Governor's Energy Office. In this role, as it relates to buildings, I'm focused on building decarbonization, building code adoption and implementation. On the energy efficiency side, I am tracking our energy efficiency programs throughout the state as it relates to both our goals that we have in statute, the goals that we see in the state's climate action plans, anything that is really promoting the goals of the state. I am an ex-energy consultant, so I have also situated myself as the data nerd of the office. So you will see quite a few graphs today, but I'm a visual person, and that's how I like to tell stories. So before we kick it off, I just want to throw a couple of really high-level statistics out. These are going to be descriptive statistics, and these are going to be something that we are all probably very familiar with, but it really helps set the stage for this conversation. The first one is that Maine has 50% of the land in New England, but only 10% of the population. We're considered by a multitude of sources to be the most rural state in the US, with trees outnumbering us 3,300 to 1. And really that helps frame everything. We're inherently a very rural state with a lot of distance in between our different communities. And that really kind of brings forward the issues that we're currently faced with, especially with home heating. So with home heating, the reason that we have such a high proportion of delivered fuels, I mean, there's quite a few reasons, but a primary reason is because of that rural nature that we have in the state. In Maine, we see that homes are consuming 58% of homes utilize fuel oil for heating their homes during the winter. And this can be compared to the chart on the top right, where in the US, it's only 4%. At the bottom, this is highlighting that Maine is the most heating oil dependent state in the US. This is distillate fuel oil, so residential home heating oil, consumed by the residential sector, and we look at it on a per capita basis. And you can see that Maine is the highest dependent on distillate fuel oil in the US, followed by the rest of New England, with Alaska tossed in there. And you can see US and the lighter blue hanging around in the middle. But we have done a couple of things in the past, really before we started hammering down on heat pumps and before the climate action plan existed. There were a couple of things in statute. One of those was an oil consumption reduction goal by 2030 and 2050. So if we just focus on the chart on the top, the blue and yellow stacked graph, that is distillate and residual fuel oil consumption. So that includes not only residential, but also what we see in the commercial industry, what we see in the industrial industry. But that's what we're consuming in the state. And our goal in statute was to reduce those based on 2007 levels by 30% by 2030 and by 50% by 2050. Well, you can see that the 2030 and 2050 lines, they're the horizontal dark blue and green lines going across the top graph. We have already completed our 2030 goal. We had a couple of blips in 2015 and 2017, but we have achieved that goal, and we are well on the way to our 2050 goal, which of course begged the question of what's next. In the light of what is next, and as we start thinking about our goals that we have for energy efficiency and for buildings, it is also important to note that this is not a quick process. We have a lot of homes, around 550,000, I think, residential homes in the state. And some of those homes are going to be faced with using delivered fuel for a while. It may be workforce constraints and getting contractors out to the house. It may be capital for the residential occupant to install something like a heat pump. So it is important for us to think about this through an equitable lens, which is why I just want to take a quick pause and look at what the prices have looked like, especially in the recent months. You can see that on the left, we have delivered fuel prices for heating oil, kerosene, and propane. And ever since the Russia invasion of Ukraine, prices have skyrocketed. We are seeing a lot of volatility. I mean, this probably looks like a stock ticker to some people. So what we did as an office is we put together a winter heating season tips and resources, kind of like a guide to really help people save as much money as they can and utilize state programs throughout the winter heating season. This could include tips on reducing your energy bill. It involves programs that are for vulnerable and disadvantaged communities and populations. And it also has a couple of different contacts and websites and programs. So I wanted to just stop here and show that resource. Should it be of any use to anyone that is listening in or sitting in the room, or who may be listening to this recording in the future. And if it is not necessarily helpful to you, maybe it's helpful to someone that you know. This resource is available on the Governor's Energy Office page. The link is provided at the bottom. But if you just go to maine.gov/energy, that's going to be our landing page, and you can very easily navigate to it, as well as a lot of the other resources that I'm going to be using tonight. So back to the idea of what's next. I'm sure a lot of these are going to be pretty familiar to all of you. The first one, Maine Won't Wait, that's our climate action plan that was established in December of 2020. Earlier this year, the Governor's Energy Office put together a comprehensive energy summary and assessment of the state. This also does include stuff like renewables. So we have wind, solar, storage, we have distributed generation, we have grid infrastructure, but we also have buildings and energy efficiency. So think of the middle resource as kind of the one-stop shop snapshot of what is going on in Maine, all things energy, not just buildings. But on the right, we do have, that was referenced about 10 minutes ago, the 2-year update on Maine Won't Wait. It was released just this week, and we had some very exciting new findings and new results that are coming out of that. So I just wanted to show these as these are kind of the 3 primary resources and reports that I would reference. The other one is some incredibly exciting news. So ACEEE, which stands for the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, they're essentially the de facto group that analyzes energy efficiency and building policy throughout every single state in the US. And they provide a ranking. And this does, the 2022 edition has a new category, which includes equity. And this year, Maine ranked 5th in the country. It's the first time that we have been down to single digits. We were the most improved state. We are seen as a national leader in this. So this is incredibly exciting news to be recognized on a national level for what we are doing in this realm. So let's get into some of the results. The first one, thinking about weatherization. We're starting to see that weatherization projects are starting to approach pre-pandemic levels. Now that's really important because if you think about energy efficient upgrades with weatherization, you have to have someone coming into your home, being in there for quite some time. So we did see quite a bit of a dip between 2019 and 2020. We do have legislative and climate goals as they relate to weatherization. We want to double the pace of weatherization, which will result in 35,000 dwellings being weatherized by 2030. Since 2019, we have weatherized 9,000 dwellings. And between efforts of the Efficiency Maine Trust and Maine State Housing Authority, their projections and kind of what they're looking at in their pipeline, we are on track to achieve those ambitious climate goals. Really exciting, we do have 25 million from the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan that is going to Efficiency Maine for home weatherization. And this particular pot of funds is going to be targeted directly towards low and moderate income dwellings in the state. So really looking at how we are approaching these climate goals with a focus on disadvantaged communities. Just wanted to show this. This is just a geographic distribution of what we're looking at with weatherization projects in the state. On the left, we can see the raw numbers. On the right, we can see them per 100 residents. And so that's when we see, if you look down in like the Portland area, for instance, you see a lot of weatherization projects. When you consider it in relation to its population, you can see that up north, we have quite a bit of pockets that are doing a lot of really great work. So my favorite topic, heat pumps. Maine is a national leader in heat pumps. I cannot tell you how many times I have been on a call with another state agency, be it California, Washington, Minnesota, Massachusetts, New York, and they're always asking us how we are achieving such incredible results from our heat pump program. So we do have legislative and climate goals additionally with heat pumps. The primary one being 100,000 new heat pumps by 2025, with 15,000 of those being provided to income eligible households. And since 2019, we have installed more than 82,000 new heat pumps. This is with combined efforts from the Efficiency Maine Trust and for Maine State Housing Authority. And I'll just take a quick step back and say that the Efficiency Maine Trust is kind of our quasi-state agency implementer of energy efficient projects, and Maine Housing provides to low income and economically vulnerable neighbors. So when I say 82,000 new heat pumps since 2019, it's kind of hard to imagine that. So I like to look at it in terms of what it's equivalent to. It's equivalent to 2 million BTUs offset per year, 350,000 barrels of oil offset per year, 15 million gallons of oil per year. These are absolutely incredible statistics that just show how effective heat pumps are in terms of the emissions that they avoid. One thing that we're all thinking about, especially this winter, is prices. I showed you the delivered fuel prices and how volatile things have been, especially this year. And I'm sure everyone's seen the articles talking about the increase in the standard offer by the electric utilities that's going to go into effect January 1st. Understandably so, we start to look at the cost effectiveness of heat pumps. And if you look at this graph at the bottom, the yellow line, that is the cost per MMBTU of a heat pump. And the reason that we look at it in per MMBTU is comparing kilowatt hours to, let's say, a gallon of oil or a therm of natural gas is pretty difficult. So we kind of need to do some translation of these to make it an apples to apples comparison. And that's what we've done here. We have also modeled what the pricing effect of the increased standard offer will be as it relates to other common heating systems. And heat pumps are still significantly cheaper than anything else. Heat pumps are a third of the cost of an oil furnace, propane furnace, or electric baseboard. They're really, really competitive with natural gas, which is seen as a very cost-effective way to heat your home, but they're still cheaper than natural gas, and they certainly emit less carbon than a natural gas furnace. Similar to the weatherization, just wanted to show some of the geographic distribution that we're looking at. Again, the left map is showing the raw distribution, and the right is showing heat pumps per 100 residents. And we can see again, we have a lot of activity in the southern and mid-coast region, which is excellent. But we also got to give credit to our neighbors up north in the county. They're doing a lot of really great work there. We see those really dark shaded regions. So there's a lot of heat pump activity up north, which is further showing that the heat pumps are truly working at the coldest places in the state. Heat pumps are highly efficient, down to -15 degrees Fahrenheit. They still are cost effective at that point. So, I mean, it's just incredible what this technology has done and can do and will continue to do. Outside of weatherization and heat pumps, I also like to talk about heat pump water heaters. We don't have anything in statute for these, but it is certainly worth highlighting the benefits of these technologies. They utilize a similar technology to a heat pump, but instead of providing heating and cooling and ventilation to your home, it rather provides dehumidification benefits to your home, as well as heating your water. At the top right, we can see just how cheap heat pump water heaters are compared to other water heating systems. And we can see that since 2018, we have installed over 40,000 heat pump water heaters in the state. In terms of building codes, so you might see down at the bottom, it says International Code Council, the ICC. The ICC releases versions of the code every 3 years. So we have 2009, 12, 15, 18, 21. and that catches us up to where we are at. Previously, we were at the 2009 version, and about 2 years ago, we updated to the 2015. So we were really training our building and contracting community. And MUBEC, which is the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code, is currently reviewing the 2021 code. That is slated for adoption in early spring of next year. And with that adoption of the 2021 version, we are caught up with the available ICC codes, which is just some very, very exciting news, especially for the new construction that is happening within the state. It's going to be very modern. It's going to be highly efficient. So just some incredible movements that we've seen in the building code universe in Maine. So federal funding. I'm sure everyone has heard of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. These are the really big pots of money that we're going to be seeing all throughout the US and for making improvements to our climate and our energy system. So I'm only going to dive into this just a little bit. And the reason that I'm only diving a little bit is because the information that we're getting from the federal government is trickling down pretty slowly. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of programs, and it's a lot for both the federal government to navigate, but also for state governments to navigate. I mean, we're tracking these on a day-to-day basis, hitting refresh on the pages until we see some new information. So the bipartisan infrastructure law, you know, it does look at a lot of different things like clean drinking water, high-speed internet, but we're also looking at the climate crisis. And what we're going to see with the bipartisan infrastructure law is a lot of really great programs that are being stood up. Compare this to the Inflation Reduction Act, and the easiest way to kind of think about what's the difference between these is that the Inflation Reduction Act is kind of what you will see as individuals. That's where you're going to see stuff like the additional federal rebates for heat pumps. You're going to see property tax credits for weatherization. So some really great benefits there. In terms of timing of some of those additional rebates, they are slated for next year. However, we have heard recently that is likely going to be late next year. So we do not know what the current incentive structure looks like. We do not know, you know, what the dollar amount that you may receive for installing a heat pump. But we do have a keen eye on that, and so I would highly encourage everyone who is currently, you know, in the room listening or viewing remotely to check in on the Governor's Energy Office page, on the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation and Future page, but also our energy efficiency partners at the Efficiency Maine Trust and Maine State Housing Authority. Once we have information, we will be very quick to post it because we know that a lot of people are very, very excited about these opportunities. Let's talk about getting involved. What can we do for energy efficiency? What can we do to modernize buildings? You know, I tossed out a lot of stuff about the benefits of heat pumps and heat pump water heaters and weatherization. But what do we do? What do we do now? For the purposes of this conversation, I wanted to highlight two particular paths. The first one is simple. Simply seek energy efficiency opportunities. This could involve going back to your home and looking around. Anything that plugs into a socket, consumes electricity, consumes any type of oil or gas, fill up a tank, anything like that. There are likely ways that can be improved, that can be made more efficient. And when it's made more efficient, not only are we helping out the environment and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but you're also going to be saving money on your energy bills. Two sides of the same coin. It's a win-win situation. So in terms of energy efficiency opportunities, there are certainly rebates that are offered within the state. I know that Efficiency Maine Trust came and talked for this program in the past. But I wanted to also, you know, specifically call them out for this because they do have absolutely fabulous incentives for anything from LED lights to heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. And you can find all of that at efficiencymaine.com. For those that may be income qualified, looking at mainhousing.org, they provide the federal rebates that I was speaking about, and they provide more comprehensive, I think actually just free, you know, weatherization and heat pump services, which is just a really great resource that we have. Both Efficiency Maine and Maine Housing, those resources and those links are provided at the top link. That's the maine.gov/energy/initiative/energy efficiency. Everything that I'm talking about, you know, can be found in terms of the programs can be found on that page. And as always, if the pages are hard to navigate, or you have a particular question, a really kind of in the weeds question, reach out to me. I talk with constituents and residents and commercial properties, industrial properties. I talk to them on a day-to-day basis and help guide them through a lot of the programs that we have. So I would encourage you to reach out to me. The next one is thinking about the Community Resiliency Partnership. This particular program is ran by our sister office, which is the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future, also known as GOPIF. And GOPIF set up this program to essentially allow communities to stand up their own infrastructure for thinking about grant writing and climate action plans and what you can do to help reduce the emissions and increase the efficiency, but also thinking about stuff like climate change resiliency. So I would encourage you to also check out the Community Resiliency Partnership. There are available resources to look at what our peers are doing, what our neighboring towns and cities and areas, what they might be doing with this partnership. So far, we have awarded, I think, about 70 communities within the state, and we have the next round opening in the spring of 2023. Now, we do have a manager for that program. His name is Brian Ambrett. He's the Senior Climate Resilience Coordinator, and I included his email below as well. You can also find his contact information on the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and Future website, much like you can find my contact information on the Governor's Energy Office website. So those are two really easy ways to really start thinking about how to modernize your buildings, to increase energy efficiency, to decrease carbon emissions, and to also decrease your energy bill, which everyone loves. And that is what I've got. So happy to take any questions. I don't know if we're doing questions immediately or what the process for that is.
Does anyone have a burning question for Ross? We'd like to hold discussion until after we've heard from Naomi. Is that all right? Great. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. It's so exciting to hear about the things where Maine is really leading. Like we're off here in the corner of the country. I have a friend who calls it the cul-de-sac of America, but here we are out front, which is really great. So our second speaker tonight is Naomi Albert from the Climate to Thrive, which is a wonderful organization that has been in existence for a few years now on the island of Mount Desert. And they've been doing some really wonderful things in terms of getting communities together and active and supporting communities and writing climate action plans. And they're a great model for what this might look like here, or what action might look like here. And they're also a close neighbor, and there's a lot that we can learn from them. So we're so glad to have Naomi here with us tonight. Over to you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me. Let me just share my screen a second. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks so much for having me. As was mentioned, my name is Naomi and I'm a project manager with the Climate to Thrive. And I can provide a little bit more of what this is looking like from a community organization's perspective. So a Climate to Thrive is a local organization on Mount Desert Island. We are a nonprofit that was founded about 7 years ago in 2015. And it really arose from conversations around potlucks and picnic tables. And it was really community members that wanted to take action on climate change and do something in their community. And they started talking and were able to organize around this nonprofit. And so our goal is helping the island transition off fossil fuels and become energy independent. And so we really see buildings as a key part of this. And so today I'd like to share a little bit about our comprehensive building solutions program, which we're launching this January. So this is something that we're preparing to launch, but it's built off our past experience running solarized and weatherized campaigns. So those are community group ride programs for solar and weatherization. And after having run those programs over the past several years, we really want to integrate all of these different types of efficiency upgrades under one program to really encourage a more comprehensive approach for thinking about these as pieces of the same puzzle and on the pathway to ultimately getting your home as comfortable and efficient as possible. So this new program that we're preparing to launch will encompass weatherization, solar, heat pump hot water heaters, battery storage, while also providing information about how you might transition to electric appliances like induction stoves, and then quicker fixes like LED light bulbs and low flow shower heads that can improve efficiency. So I think Ross did a good job of sharing some of the needs earlier and what's going on at the broader state level. But our focus on buildings kind of arises from how integral this is to climate action in Maine. So buildings are responsible for about 30% of Maine's greenhouse gas emissions, and 94% of those CO2 emissions from residential buildings come from burning petroleum products like fuel oil. So we really see retrofitting buildings and getting away from fuel oil is really key. And some of this information was already shared, but I think this is really key, that in Maine, we rely, I think we are the most reliant state in the country on fuel oil. So about 60% of Maine homes rely on fuel oil versus 4%, which is the national average. And we also have a very old housing stock. So we really saw this additionally as a need. We have these old inefficient buildings, extremely high fuel oil prices. We've seen them rise dramatically over the last 10 years. And so there's really a need, not only from the climate perspective, but also from the energy affordability perspective as well, and from an equity perspective. And more broadly in the United States, we also see a need to really increase the rate of these building retrofits. So Maine as a state is doing much better than the rest of the country, and we really are leaders here as we were just hearing about some of the successes. But as a nation, this was a quote from 2020 that was saying that it would take approximately 500 years to complete whole building retrofits on all residences. And they're talking about energy efficient retrofits. And obviously that's not the pace that we need to be on to really be addressing climate change. And so we really felt this need to try to kind of speed this up in our own community and kind of help facilitate that. We also saw that while we're seeing increasing incentives from the federal government, that transitioning to a more efficient electric home can be confusing because you're thinking about multiple upgrades and navigating contractors and some really expensive projects. And so through our past campaigns, we learned that by having a trusted community partner that's a contractor that we as a community organization trust and can direct folks to, that can really help people feel confident in moving forward with an energy upgrade. And so that's a part of the program that I'll share in just a bit. And then finally, a need for directing renters towards the options that they have. Excuse me, I have a phone ringing in the background. And just seeing that renters really have few options for improving their efficiency, comfort, and the affordability of their homes. So in part of what we'd like to do with this program is help renters think about the options that they do have and guide them towards that, because it's easy to feel stuck. And then finally, we wanted to guide folks in our community towards taking a comprehensive approach and thinking about how upgrades can complement each other and act as pieces of the puzzle to really transitioning your home. So this can help you make a plan and a budget, avoid getting caught off guard by emergency replacements. You think about, if your furnace dies in the middle of winter and you end up getting another fuel oil powered furnace, you could end up with that appliance for 20 plus years. So really thinking about that so that you're not stuck with an upgrade that won't serve you in the future. And then also helping people start at a place that makes sense for their own home and their own budget, whether they're able to invest in something larger like solar, or start with something that might be low-hanging fruit like air sealing or low flow shower heads, whatever that might be. And just as an example about how we want people to think about how energy upgrades complement each other and work together, thinking about the reverse of that, if you're not thinking about that, you could be making upgrades that you will need to be updating again in the future. So for example, if you purchase a heat pump and your home is drafting not well air sealed, it might have been better potentially to do that air sealing beforehand so you can right size the heat pump for your more efficient home and also have greater comfort. So that's just one example. Or if you get solar, but then later decide to get heat pumps and electric vehicle, you might end up adding extra panels with your additional electrical load. So wanting to think about what your ultimate vision is for your home as you're undergoing any upgrade. So the goals of our program are really to increase the number of heat pump hot water heater, solar and weatherization projects on the island, while also increasing community understanding of all these strategies and ultimately how you might go about transitioning your home, as well as community understanding of the financial incentives that are available, especially as they're shifting right now. There is some conversation about what's happening with the IRA, and we want to be watching that and helping direct our community towards those new rebates when they're available. And in doing all this, we'd also like to create a model that can really be replicated in other communities. That's a big part of A Climate to Thrive's larger vision for our work, is really helping guide other Maine communities. So just to share a little bit about how we're doing this through the program, one piece I didn't include on this slide and that I alluded to earlier is that we will be partnering with contractors that we trust for the solar and the weatherization pieces, so that there is an official program partner for each of those upgrades, and we can guide community members towards a contractor we've already done some vetting with so that they have that added confidence in moving forward. We'll also be including a lot of information about all of these different upgrades on our website, and really helping be a local resource to directing folks towards what's available from the state and what's available federally as well. Holding community workshops, and then using what we're calling community energy advocates, and I'll get into that in just a minute. So to kick things off, we'll be holding a community workshop on January 14th. And this will really be to guide folks through this comprehensive approach for the home retrofits, the financing piece, and then also being an opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with contractors and our staff. And we've found in conversations with contractors that this is really helpful, having this conversation, sharing information before there's even a site visit. So everyone's on the same page. You have the information you really need to mull over before you have a site visit, and then you're shocked when they give you an estimate for the cost. And we'll also be using energy advocates. So this will be a trained group of community volunteers who will be helping guide folks through the process of this program. So they'll receive some basic training about the technologies, how you might think about a comprehensive approach and available financing, and they will help guide participants through the program. And a really important piece here is we don't want them to be presenting themselves as energy experts or energy consultants. That's really not the intent. The intent is that they're another community member advocating for their neighbor through their participation in this program. So really helping guide them towards the resources there and connecting them to contractors, following up, ensuring that folks are having a good experience through the program, and really being that consistent source of communication and support, because we know navigating some of these upgrades, especially when thinking about them in combination, can be kind of confusing and a daunting process to take on your own. So through this, we really hope to provide support for participants in understanding a comprehensive approach, understanding where to start, more education, again, support from those energy advocates or the community volunteers, and really the confidence needed to move forward with projects by working with recommended contractors. So that's a little bit about the program. If you are interested in more information about A Climate to Thrive, I'd recommend checking out our website. We do have a monthly newsletter, so you're welcome to sign up for that. And we hold monthly calls with communities across the state through an initiative we're calling Local Leads the Way, where we have conversations about what climate action looks like in communities and share resources and lessons learned. So that's a good way to get involved as well. And then I will also say we are launching a statewide climate ambassadors program in March 2023. And this will be a training program to help community members really figure out what their niche is and their role is in local climate action. So if you or someone you know might be interested in that, I recommend checking out our website. So thank you so much for having me, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about our program as well. I've listed my email on the screen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Wow, those are two really great conversations or presentations that kick off our discussion tonight. Does anyone have any questions for our speakers? If you don't, I do.
There might be one, there's one in the chat.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm curious about the adoption of induction stove. Is the trend going up for that rather than gas stoves? Do you notice any patterns?
I can speak from the state perspective. Currently, induction stoves are not part of Efficiency Maine's rebate program, so we really don't have a lot of really good information at the state level. I'm sure Naomi can provide some at the community level. But we are seeing a lot of other states, especially neighboring states in the New England region, that are looking towards induction stoves, as they are really the most efficient way to cook while making sure that you are consuming the least amount of energy. And I'll see if Naomi wants to fill in anything with community level.
Yes, 15 years ago in Abiquiu, New Mexico, we put an induction stove
Wow.
and an intense cook in the family, and it was stunning way back then. So I'm hoping for that change.
Yeah, I've heard that they've really improved over recent years as well.
Yeah.
We don't have any data as far as adoption in our community. This is, again, a new program, and we've never done something involving induction stoves before. I do know there's growing research and awareness about the health impacts of gas stoves in homes, and I think that that's going to be leading to greater and greater adoption of induction stoves, especially in new homes, especially in places like California. Yeah.
Right, and the energy efficiency of them.
Yeah, it's energy efficiency, but that I've heard that as well. You're getting a lot of head nods, Naomi, about the air quality associated with gas stoves. You don't think about it,
None
but
of
it's
the
an open
byproducts
flame.
are coming
Yeah,
into your
and it's
house.
exactly. Good
Yeah.
question.
Sorry.
John, did you have?
I have a question of Rob's.
Yeah.
And this is about state policy. As I understand it from your presentation, we had a goal of reducing by 30% the fuel oil use by 2030 and 50% by 2050. It looks like we're making good progress on that. I'm wondering why we are having our target is to still have 50% of the fuel oil being burned. It strikes me that that may have been the initial target, but as our experience seems to be showing better progress, does the state consider changing those targets?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I mean, we're all going to see different policies that come into play. To quickly talk about the heat pump goal, we're going to hit the 100,000 heat pumps by 2025. And, ever since I've seen our adoption curves, my thought has been what's next. So in terms of the oil reduction, that statute was in place for a couple of years prior to the development of the climate action plan, and really before we saw heat pumps take off. One thing to note about that is, especially with the residual fuel oil, we do see some consumption in the industrial sector. The industrial sector also does consume distillate as well, and we have seen emissions in the industrial sector plummet. And a big reason for that is sites are closing down. And so we have also started the Industrial Innovation Task Force, which is looking to grow our industrial sector. But right now we're asking them to hold their emissions steady. And the industrial sector does represent only I think about 12% of state emissions. But we're doing that to allow for economic growth in the area. We've seen a lot of mills shut down. And so we want to kind of give them space for economic growth while also having the climate goals on the horizon. So kind of in terms of what's next for that goal, why haven't we increased it? I can say that I do believe that we are going to be looking towards those goals and strengthening them and kind of updating them. We're talking about modernizing buildings, so modernizing policy comes along with that. And in this time of rapid adoption of these highly energy efficient measures, it's at a very quick pace, and so policy just simply needs to adapt to that. So that is something that the office has been looking at.
Thank you.
Great. Beverly. And then we'll go to the questions in the chat.
Okay. Hi, I'm interested in community education, and Naomi, I think you mentioned something about increasing community understanding. A lot of us are probably the choir here. What do you do for community outreach through ACTT, or what would you recommend that other communities might do?
Yeah, so I think a big way that we're pushing out outreach is through this community event that we're holding at the local high school in January. And we're pushing on outreach for that through a variety of avenues, through the local papers, via social media, on flyers around the community, and really advertising that event in terms of trying to help folks gain better control over their energy costs, as we're seeing rising energy costs via fuel oil, really providing strategies to help get that back under control and have more energy independence over your home by having solar as well. And so I think that speaking to the energy affordability and the comfort benefits of some of these upgrades can be really useful when you're not speaking to the choir. So that's a major way we're getting the news out, and then hoping that from that folks will then explore the more extensive resources on our website and actually go about participating in the program. And the other way is through these community volunteers. We're calling the energy advocates, that are these trained volunteers that are kind of facilitating folks' participation in the program. And we hope that by having these members of the community helping other members of the community through this and helping them understand these technologies, that it can really increase community comfort with these technologies. When you have a neighbor or someone that you know and a trusted community member sharing more information about this with you, and that they can also help spread the word more through their connections and their channels as well.
Great.
That phrase that you mentioned jumped out at me as well. And Naomi, I think I also heard you saying that a climate to thrive is really positioning itself between the somewhat confusing landscape of rapidly evolving incentives and programs from the state and for the federal government, and trying to help make sense of that. So it's a clearer menu of options and opportunities for residents. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that while there's a ton of fantastic resources on Efficiency Maine's website, not everyone in our community knows to go there. And so we're trying to help direct people to where those resources are and share with them that there's all of these incentives now available to help them really improve their homes, and share that and share how you might go about that and what they might be, eligible to look at. So yeah, I think we view ourselves as a connector of information to folks.
Great. And you're willing to share that with other towns and cities that want to do the same sort of interpretation effort?
Yeah, we welcome you to explore our website or reach out if you have any questions about the approach that we're taking.
Great. Brenda, do you have questions?
So, the first question in the chat was from Ken, and some of you can read it as well, but I'll just put it out there that he has tried to schedule a home performance assessment via, I think, Efficiency Maine, and no one's gotten back to them. His question is, are these companies simply overwhelmed?
Those are the home energy audit companies
Yeah.
that do blower door tests on residences.
Yeah.
I can respond to that with a big old resounding yes. Workforce is incredibly constrained right now. We saw some transition during COVID, but or during the height of the COVID pandemic, especially in 2020 and 2021. But we are starting to see the programs ramp back up. There is a very high level of demand In some instances, we're hearing from contractors that they have a 3-month wait period. And that's simply just due to the amount of requests that they get against how many people they have on staff. The governor's energy office has a very keen eye to this. We have actually established a clean energy partnership, which is a conglomerate of different industries. We're looking at higher education, we're looking at trades, unions, private companies, anything, nonprofits. And what we're doing with that program is finding ways to strengthen the clean energy economy and the clean energy workforce, and get people trained so that we can achieve our climate goals. There's been a lot of some really great material that's put out about how weatherization contractors and electricians are going to be the ones that at the end of the day really help solve the climate crisis, because we need them in our homes to be installing this equipment. And so that's what the Clean Energy Partnership is doing. We actually just released, I want to say it's 2.5 million in grants to a bunch of different organizations throughout the state to really build up these workforces. So all of that is to say, Ken, yes, they are very overwhelmed. I would highly recommend looking at Efficiency Maine's vendor finder. You can select different types of projects that you want to do, along with the desired distance from your home. And as always, if you have some trouble getting in contact with them, reach out to me. I can absolutely help you out with that, but we do have a keen eye to this and are looking to strengthen Maine's clean energy workforce.
Great. I'd love to. I'm always glad to hear about the programs that are helping to train people for these jobs, because it seems like this is a huge, high impact, high growth career opportunity for Mainers, young and old, and DIYers. So one quick follow-up question before we go on. Are there programs that are coming online to support people who are doing this work on their own homes? Because Maine has a robust tradition of people doing for themselves. And how are we taking advantage of that are serving them? No?
You have an issue. You have an issue with the heat pump because it has Freon in it, and you have to have a federal.
You haven't heard about Mr. Cool.
Huh?
There's a DIY heat pump. I can talk with you after that. We have 3 of them.
Not legally.
No, it's legal.
Yeah, well, a lot of people say stuff is legal.
3. All right. Anyway, okay, but
And with just
DIYers.
yeah, just a couple of things on that. We do have a lot of DIY rebates that are available through Efficiency Maine. There are some particular energy efficient measures that require them to go through contractors, and heat pumps are one of those. I also see, Ken had a comment about LED bulbs, and that is something that it's a point of sale rebate. You go to Target, you go to Lowe's, Home Depot, and you'll see a little tag that says sponsored by Efficiency Maine, and the prices are reduced. In terms of advertising for those, Efficiency Maine does do a boots on the ground, and they did like advertising campaigns throughout the state, and then they opened it up to the state. But they're always looking for ways to really get the word out, and that's also what organizations like Naomi's to really help connect the dots and fill in that information. It's what I do on a daily basis. I may get a call from a constituent and point them to 5 different projects that they can do. But it's something that can always be improved, because as long as we don't have 100% awareness of these programs, there's always going to be work to do.
Right, so I think in the chat, the next question that's relevant to this discussion is, what are the options for nonprofits?
Okay.
Yeah,
So this will be our last question, and then we have to let our speakers go.
right.
So what are there specific programs or opportunities for nonprofits to support them in being more efficient in the buildings and offices that they occupy? Is that the question?
I gathered.
Okay.
So there are a couple of different programs. The first one, I had mentioned the community resiliency partnerships. Nonprofits are absolutely eligible to be community service providers for that. In terms of specific incentives or anything like that, nonprofits would fall under our commercial and industrial program. So they are still absolutely eligible for all of the incentives, and will be eligible for anything that may come down through BIL and IRA. And we are always looking for nonprofits to partner with on a lot of these grants. So, you know, this is to anyone who may be involved in a nonprofit that is listening in right now, but you know, feel free to reach out. And if there's a grant that we can really work together on, we're absolutely gonna pursue that.
Great. Ross and Naomi, thank you so much for giving up some time on a beautiful Maine December evening and a busy time of year. That was really, really wonderful, the information you shared. We really appreciate you being with us. Thanks.
Thank you. Great to join you.
You're more than welcome to stay with us or go on to whatever your evening is demanding of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I will drop my email in the chat for anyone who may have any follow-up questions or whoever wants to reach out and discuss more.
Great, thank
so
you.
much.
We appreciate that
Yeah.
generosity. Okay,
Are you just leave the people up there like that?
yeah, okay, we can leave the people, leave the people.
Leave the people.
Great, so it's time for our conversation about what do we want to do in Belfast? And just like we did last 2 months ago, when we were talking about water and stormwater, we're going to think about 3 different buckets of action. Things that people can do today themselves without waiting for anyone. They can just take action on their own. So what things go in that bucket? A second bucket of what can we do together and what can we help each other do in the near term? So things that take lots of people coming together are things that people might help each other do. And then that third bucket, which is what are the high priority things that we want to push city council towards doing and push city leadership towards doing. And those might be things that require hiring consultants for significant costs to do research or to do actual renovation work, or things that need significant fundraising efforts to have the funds in place to make those happen, whether it's writing grants to some of the programs that we heard about tonight or other sources of funding. Okay, so is that clear? So things individuals can do, things communities we can do together, and then things that take a little more planning, a little more money, a little more organization, and are best led by the city. The last time, yes, last time we started out with individual actions. Is that where we want to start again tonight, or do we want to jump around? I'm happy to follow your lead.
Jump around.
Jump around. Do you have a place you want to jump, Jerry?
I have an input.
Okay.
I just came across a huge study that was done by the government laboratory, NREL, of housing, both commercial and residential. And one of the interesting findings was that the biggest energy loss in the housing was air intrusion, which is sort of surprising. You'd think they say, you know, the old adage is you need to insulate. Well, that was number 2.
Interesting.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is we have someone on the call, Corliss Davis, that's very involved in window dressers. She's the window dressers poobah here in Belfast. And for a number of years, we've been building inserts as a community effort here in Belfast. And it turns out that one of the more interesting features is those inserts at about neighborhood of $30 an insert, 35. Do an excellent job of sealing up windows, particularly in an old building, and eliminating air intrusion from the windows, which is the first number 1 place. That's cheap.
Yeah.
That's something that can be done.
And that organization started in Belfast? No,
Well, it actually started in Rockland, but
Okay.
Nearby.
Nearby.
Belfast was contaminated early on, and we've been involved in it since 2012.
Does everyone know about window dressers? Have you run across that organization? It's basically creating a pretty simple plastic and wood internal storm window for windows.
Yeah,
And
the key thing is that they're custom inserts that are very carefully measured. And then the frame is fixed up with sealing foam and double insulated with shrink wrap. And you end up with two things. eliminate air intrusion and insulation. You know,
So,
and it makes
Jerry-
a huge difference.
How would a person go about accessing that?
We strive every year to, you know, for a number of years, I thought that anyone that would want an insert has already known about it, but every year we keep going on and on building these things. So that, either replacing windows or getting, as a temporary measure, getting these inserts is a very easy thing to do. One woman I measured windows for, lived in manufactured housing, and she said prior to having these inserts, she could watch her drapes blow
Yeah,
through the sealed window. And after she get the inserts back in, she could sit by that window and be toasted. So that's an easy thing.
and so you've kicked us off down the road of things that we can do together, because there's some expertise involved in
Well, there's
measuring
a-
a window and
The
getting the
program
word
trains-
out.
Yeah,
and they're-
program trains people and they do an excellent job. You can walk in, have very little skills, and you can end up putting on a nice insert.
And those inserts are reusable, right?
Yes, they are. I've got
And
some of the lasted 10 years.
Nice. Corliss, do you want to add anything, Fuba of window dressers and Belfast?
Only one of the local poobahs, maybe. Well, we exist all over the state of Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire, and now a few workshops in Western Massachusetts. So the organization has grown a lot since 2010. Jerry's prices are a little bit low. Right now, I suppose for an average pine framed window, not painted, it's more like $40 to $45 because the cost of materials has just gone up over that time. But I put the website for window dressers in the chat. And we were just talking about this the other day. The urgency is people need to sign up now, even though it's not possible to get an insert made in Belfast until a year from now, November. We have so much demand that we had to close new orders on July 26th this past year. So anyone who has any interest at all in this should definitely go to the website and sign up. Otherwise, it's an all volunteer run local workshop organized by several paid staff that cover the whole New England region.
So is it the paid staff that are the bottleneck to the program growing? If you have so much interest, what is needed to grow the capacity to serve all that interest?
I don't think it's the paid staff. I think it's probably finding, it takes a lot of local volunteers to put on a workshop.
Yeah.
We just spent 2 weeks making 467 of these inserts at the boathouse, and we used probably 150 volunteers to do it. So, and it takes a good deal of organization year round to get to the point of conducting that workshop. So they desperately need one in Rockland. If you know anyone down in Rockland who is interested in setting up a window dressers workshop, they have a lot of pent up orders down there that they can't fill because they don't have any volunteers to organize the workshop.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Good. So
Anything else I can answer?
any questions? That's such an incredible organization. We've talked about it before, I think, with this group.
Very good.
Thank you, Corliss. Thanks. What else can we do together? Did anyone hear anything from Naomi's presentation or Ross's presentation that gives you an idea of something Belfast could use?
The campaigns that ACT has run with Naomi have been very successful. They did a weatherization campaign, they did a solar campaign, and it's a bigger effort, and it takes a good committed group of local volunteers along with a trusted contractor. But those programs have been very successful in generating interest in the community and getting people really interested in completing this type of work.
So before I ask you more about what you're talking about, can you introduce yourselves? And I'd love everyone to introduce yourselves when you're speaking. And sorry, we should have started with you, Jerry. But it would be great if we get to know each other a little bit through this, so names are really helpful.
Sure, I'm Paul Shepard.
Paul
I'm the
Shepard.
owner of Penobscot Home Performance. We're a weatherization contractor.
Nice to have you here.
We've been working with Climate for Pride.
Oh, great.
We were the weatherization contractor for their last
Great.
their
So,
last weatherization campaign.
so explain a little bit more about what their weatherization campaigns were. I didn't know. I don't know the details.
They have a group of volunteers that go out in the community and sort of gin up interest in in getting weatherization work done and explaining it to people. And then they select a contractor to implement the program. And that contractor typically will give discounts for the number of people that sign up. So, for instance, when we did the one in MDI, we had a tiered system where we offered discounts from 5 to 15%, depending on the number of people that signed up. So they had over 100 people sign up this last go around. So we were offering a 15% discount on work done, as well as we're registered vendors in the Efficiency Maine program. So we've given out about $160,000 in rebates to that program.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's like an information campaign and then getting people together so that there's some volume discount efficiency and numbers.
Yes, yeah, Rockland
Nice.
also had a big weatherization campaign similar to that. That worked pretty well. We were the contractor for that too. And it takes a dedicated group of local volunteers and a lot of organization to really make it work. You need trusted people in the community. You need, I know in Rockland, they use the Sierra Club has what they call cat teams, climate action teams that were going out in the community and educating people on the process and what the best ways to save energy in their house were. So
Yeah.
it's a big effort, but
But
it
it sounds
also had
like-
big results.
It makes it visible and yeah,
Very visible.
nice.
I have a question for you, Paul, about that. So in Rockland, when you're saying they use the Sierra Club volunteers, did they just like go out like door to door? Did they have like a big event or something
Yep.
like at the library? And
Yes, to
I
both
don't,
of those. They had an energy committee there, that they had a city councilor on the committee. And
okay,
some people from the Island Institute were also on the
Yeah.
committee. So they were able to generate a lot of interest. We had a kickoff event. So we had sort of a fair where we did presentations and things. And then they had people actually going out into the community door to door with
Wow.
flyers and giving them out at different events and things.
so I know you've lived in this area for a while. Has that Belfast ever done anything like this?
Not to that scale, no.
No, they rely on the CAP organization to help with weatherization.
To do the low income realization.
And then-
And there's a number of contractors in the area that work through efficiency.
And it seems like there might be money coming down through the IRA to establish something like that in Belfast.
Possible, yeah.
Possibly.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Other things we might do together. Yes, in the back.
My name is Barbara Bell.
Barbara Bell, nice to have you with us.
It seems to me in connection with what Paul was talking about perhaps, or perhaps totally different. You could, and this is kind of an outreach thing too, you could get people with different types of homes, old homes, tiny homes, large homes, to open their homes in a kind of a home tour. You know, we have open gardens here in the Garden Club, for instance. That's just about the different kinds of gardens that people have, and they're really all different kinds. You know, some people have vegetable gardens, some people have flowers, some people have mixed, blah, blah, blah. So you could have people with different levels of energy efficiency in their homes, you know, a home that has windows from window dressers, modest homes, fancy homes, and so forth.
Great idea. Did everyone online hear that?
They may not have, oh, they did.
Yes.
Great.
Oh, good.
That's a terrific idea. I love that, modeling it on the garden tours.
To sort of add to that, for years and years in many places, I spent 35 years in Seattle. And they started the Green Homes Tour, and
Ah.
over time, they kind of glamorized the whole idea of doing different ideas. And every year in many communities, Santa Fe, where I came from, it's a big deal. They do a tour every year, that's like you're saying, for energy efficiency, and it's lots of people learn a lot and lots of people come to these things.
Yeah, and what a great
So-
peer-to-peer learning,
Yes.
like neighborhood learning thing. Cool. Great idea. What else? Yes, John.
John Beal. I'm looking at sort of the opposite of what Paul's talking about. Or with the beautiful homes thing.
Yeah,
I'd like to figure out some way that we can have people from the city or from the community visiting people at their homes. But there are a lot of homes that are uninsulated, terrible heating systems, and those people aren't gonna invite beautiful homes people into their houses. There should be a way that we can access them. And I know that when I talked to CAP about this a couple of years ago, they were, oh, no, we can't, we have privacy issues, we can't tell you who our members are, but I'd love to see some active way of reaching out to people who need the support and the information.
It would be curious to know how a Climate to Thrive has achieved that, because I'm sure even though they're on Mount Desert Island, there are people that have needs, low income. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And Maine Housing,
Yeah.
through the work they do with the low income weatherization program, straight anyone who gets fuel assistance. They have a high user list that's called, so they can identify high energy users, houses in the community. They're supposed to target them first in the work that they do.
And once those people are identified, then can you go visit them?
No.
John. But John, you raise a really good question, and one of the money there's $35 million coming to the state of Maine for home weatherization costs. And it's 100% of low income households and up to 50% for moderate income households, and that's defined already. But was my question, is how are they gonna find those folks and do that outreach? And I suspect the state might be able to do things that private citizens can't in terms of having, maybe. But hopefully they're gonna do something to find the right people to make those programs accessible to, but even on a community basis, doing that kind of door to door, neighbor to neighbor, who do you know who's in need, kind of informal gathering those names, so that when that program gets rolled out, those homeowners can be helped to get access that kind of program. I'm not saying that very articulately. I'm with you. Do you get where I'm saying, what I'm trying to say?
One of the things that we did is one of the people on our committee went around to his neighbors and told them about a particular problem. And he got tremendous input because he was doing it as an individual neighbor. And, there may be ways of developing cadres to do that.
Yeah. Yep. And that's something that, maybe that's something that could be done on a person-to-person basis. So, yeah, that idea that Naomi and, I think it was Corliss who was asked, no, it was, Beverly was asking about that, making sure that the community is aware of the opportunities out there, like, that's a big deal. It's hard. I mean, especially when the same people show up to these meetings, and we're really glad you're here. Don't get me wrong, but we don't have the whole community here. So how does everyone find out about this?
Beverly's got her hand raised. Okay, Beverly.
Yeah. Could I don't know if I can speak, if you can hear me.
Yes.
But this remains a goal of mine personally all the time. And years ago, I talked the Friday farmers market into seeing if 350 Maine could put a display out about how agriculture is affected by climate change. And they agreed to do it, and we got some pretty good feedback from the people who came to the market. We were really careful not to get political about it. I was interested in what Naomi said about the high school being a sponsor of information for the community. And I think that something like that could happen at Belfast High School. I know that they've got a pretty active ecology club at MDI High School. But I think that we could work on something similar, and that affects a wide swath of people in the area, not just in Belfast, but outside of Belfast, because it's a consolidated school. And in churches and gathering places of all sorts. I think that we, through Efficiency Maine and through the governor's office, I think we have so much we could talk to people about. Really exciting possibilities. We need volunteers, we need the imagination, we need some chutzpah to ask people if it's okay if we go do these kinds of things and just develop a program and do it.
But you're absolutely right. You're pointing at the incredible value and need for a well-established community communication network to get the word out to everyone. And those channels that you mentioned, I noted. So the high school, the farmers market, churches, and this might be something we talk about with our climate symposium attendee organizations.
Right.
Yeah, great point. Yes, Jerry.
I think one of the forcing functions is going to be economic. That there's a little thing on the table or comparing home heating costs, and if your average person, let's say low income person right now, the cost to heat their home on average is with an oil furnace that's reasonably efficient but kind of old, about 82% efficiency.
That's
Is
good.
45, 47. So almost $4,600 a heating season. You know, for somebody that's low income, i.e. $20,000 to $25,000,
Yeah,
that's a huge part of their budget.
yeah,
And the issue I have, and I think that we're gonna have to address is those people couldn't afford to put in a heat pump system,
right.
you know, in order to lower their heating costs. You know, even though they're paying through the nose.
$35 million is coming to the state that can
But
help
that has to
make
go,
that
somehow
happen.
that has to go, a large part of that has to go to cover most of the cost of the installation of a.
Yeah, and that's
heat pump
exactly, that's, as I understand it, that's what's coming, but making sure that we know the right people in the community who need that is, yeah.
But we have to get the word out somehow
Yeah.
and let these people know that they don't have to put up with this.
Well, that's the brilliant angle to this home tour idea. Is that you could have, if you could, because we also don't trust people who aren't like us in general, not just Mainers, but in general. So if you have a chance to go into somebody's house that looks like yours on the outside, and they've already done this, and you can go talk to them and they can tell you what it was like living through a winter with a heat pump, then you're more likely to say, oh, maybe that does work for me. So I think that's a really great idea. Good point. Yeah. There's capital costs involved that are a huge barrier. So what else do we want to think about doing as a community, doing together, things that we can do to help each other in the 1 to 2 year-ish place? Yeah, is there anything online?
Well, I can suggest training local energy coordinators. I mean, that's what, Climate to Thrive says and other people, I mean, in order to train volunteers, you have to have somebody to oversee it. Same thing with reaching out to all the churches in the high school and creating programs. Somebody has to do that.
So I guess we need a visit from Bill McKibben, huh?
Sure.
He would just like take up residence and lead the charge in Belfast, but I think that's what you're calling for. Yes, leadership.
Who's gonna do it?
I have a question. Uniform building code. I don't know much about it. Somebody else must know a lot more than I know, but is it good enough? Is it adequate? And can it be made better at the local level, which I think it can, but is it even good enough for Maine? You know, because
Is it updated?
Hmm?
Is it updated for?
we have
Can
that,
we
but
do that?
what I mean is, if you're in California, I guess you have sort of the same building code as we have in Maine, but it's obviously two different places in terms of insulation. So
Building codes are done individually by each state. Maine doesn't have a particular building code for the whole state. Some towns have adopted them, others haven't. And oil and natural gas has 4 inspectors for the whole state. That's, and there's not a lot of overseeing of what goes on.
I will say, I sat in on a presentation last week from, I'm not gonna remember her name, the executive director of Passive House Maine. And this is recorded and you'd be able to find it through the Portland Library Sustainability Series. And she was talking about upgrades to the code that, and I believe contractors had to be trained in the last year for that big jump. Ross, I think, also mentioned it, that we went from the 2007 to the 2015 codes. And they're looking at adopting 2021 codes statewide. So I believe that's part of what is driving the cost of new construction up. And it is part of what's making it harder to find contractors, because not all contractors know about this or have been certified. Is that?
One of the things you're not seeing is that
Yeah,
smaller towns, they don't have an inspector.
right.
There's only, the
Right.
only inspector that's required for a town, and it can be a common one for multiple towns, is a plumbing.
Huh.
Okay, because they're worried about water and contamination. There's no electrical inspectors, there's no structural inspectors. They're just not there.
Whoa.
Huh,
So who's gonna pay somebody, each small town, $50,000 for somebody that may come once in a while, go out once in a while? They're not.
and that, those inspections, I imagine, are somewhat punitive, like if they come in and you're either okay or you're not, it's not a, let me help you do that better, it's, you failed your
No,
inspection.
I've seen them work both ways.
So well, this is great to have this conversation, so can you, as we're thinking about what could Belfast do? Could, like, we're not worried about money right now, but in a perfect world, could Belfast have a building inspector who goes around and helps contractors meet code and is seen as a positive, like an asset to help people be successful with renovations and new construction,
But
if we had the money?
code is such a wide ranging thing, and you have an electric code, which is
Yeah.
a book like that thick,
Yep,
and it changes every year. You have oil or natural gas, which has multiple books. That are not written by anybody, they're written by insurance companies, they're
Yeah.
called NFPA, National Fire Prevention Association. And they're adopted by the board that covers that area.
so that sounds like a quagmire,
Oh, it's, yeah, so you don't have one inspector to do it all. 'Cause
but
you
what
can
is
have a stack of codes like this and have no idea.
We have
the
code
right
enforcement
direction, though?
officers.
Yeah,
We have code enforcement
Okay.
officers.
I
You do.
Yeah, Paul, go.
Just in terms of
word
the
constraint.
energy code, Maine adopted the 2015 IECC.
Energy code,
Yeah,
okay,
and so that was a huge upgrade over the 2008 code
Okay.
that they were implementing. And that's in effect for every town over 4,000 people. So towns that are less than 4,000 people can to choose to adopt that or not. But every town larger than that has to use that code for new construction and
and
additions or major renovations.
what was the cutoff, the town size?
4,000. So in Belfast, you have to follow it. And it's been in effect for most of this year, so most contractors are getting pretty familiar with it and know how to implement it. And it does cost a little more initially to build a house
Yeah,
following that code, but in the long run, the amount of energy that people will save living in their house will
right,
make up.
so,
No, they're on board. They have to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
any other things, we might do together? Or can you, like, are we done with this conversation about inspection? Is there can you imagine an advocate style inspector who would be helpful for contractors in the community?
Not if he has no enforcement ability.
Right.
I just
Half
comment
contractors
on
ago.
the $50,000 or something that somebody mentioned to have an inspector for a town. I mean, it's a practice that we know well all around Maine, where towns can't afford to have assessors, tax
Right.
assessors, and all other kinds of personnel. So what they do is they hire a company that operates usually county by county, sometimes by
Right.
region, and they get that company hires, a group of people and they go around. So I'm envisioning a nonprofit who specializes in inspectors. And those people would be advocates, inspectors, let's say. We're just going up a level from the contractors, the weatherization contractors, or the energy contractors, energy efficiency contractors, or whatever else. I'm just envisioning a tier above that, that's the inspectors, the green inspectors.
Yeah,
And so that's a mechanism, that's not something that we're doing together in the community of Belfast, say, but
Right.
actually Belfast is a central community in Waldo County, we know that, so if
Right.
A group like Revision or somebody who's in a different business, but if Revision had an offshoot that specialized in inspectors, that might be an interesting business possibility.
yeah. Interesting idea. I'm sorry.
We need entrepreneurs to take advantage of this money to be able to do something wonderful.
Yeah,
It seems like the time is right for that.
yeah. Anything else we want to do together? Do we want to move on to things that people can do on their own, or do we want to make a list of the things that we want the city to do? Which sounds like more
I
fun.
think we should make a list of the things for the city to do, because we all sitting here, we heard a lot from Ross and Naomi about what individuals can do.
Yeah.
And we are the choir, and we do usually hear a lot about what individuals can do. But it's a little harder to figure out what the city could do.
Okay. You have something to kick off and. John, you do.
One of the things that I've looked at is sustainability directors. Portland has
Yeah.
one. Rockland had one and then got rid of it. I'm not sure the reason. But it seems to me that if 3 or 4 mid-coast towns shared a sustainability director, you could do it reasonable cost, and you'd also be sharing ideas, approaches, solutions among towns with some commonality.
Yeah, and it would be a good way to apply for all of the grant money. Because
Great,
they would work.
great idea.
I nominate you, John.
Other ideas? What would you like the city of Belfast to do around supporting more efficient city buildings, residents?
I think it would be nice if they made a statement about it,
Oh, like what?
like, we are committed to helping our buildings be this by that,
Set a goal.
They've never
The city
made,
is already,
no, where's the statement?
no, I'm saying. In terms of actual energy savings on city buildings, they've
Yeah.
already done a lot of.
They have, but it's a nice, goal or whatever. It would be a nice, optics is what I'm trying to say. If they said, we're committed to doing this, but also helping people. You know what I mean? I don't know.
It was kind of striking when Ross could say, however many years ago, we set a goal of 100,000 heat pumps by such and such a date, and here we are, and you can see the overachievement on that particular metric.
I guess I would like to just see like a climate action goal.
The
overall.
goal.
Like a climate action plan?
Well, yes, a goal of the plan, yeah.
This is what we wanted to do, this is what we've done, and this is what we want to do in
Or
the
just
future.
sort of like,
It'll help us all,
yes,
really, give you hope.
yeah,
Since I'm hearing, I'm newer here,
yeah,
since I'm hearing from all of you that the city has done a lot already.
they have.
So
They
that's interesting.
They've done something.
Oh.
I will say, and this, something that we've just recently realized, and John, I'm glad you're sitting right there, and Fred and Jerry too, so you can correct us. And in our All of Belfast Climate Dialogues group, we were having this conversation, that when we have these discussions, so often people are really excited about taking action. If only we had somebody to lead it. And a lot of us have been making assumptions that, oh, that's the Climate Crisis Committee's job. But that's not the Climate Crisis Committee's job. The Climate Crisis Committee is an advisory committee to the city council. They're not an activist group, and they're not an action group. Same with all of Belfast Climate Dialogues. We keep calling people together to have these conversations and talking about all the things that we might do. But we're part of the library, and the library's job is to bring people together, to give people information, to help you get done and inform the things that you want to do. So we've been talking a lot and teeing things up, but in Belfast today, there's no organization that exists equivalent to a Climate to Thrive on Mount Desert, who's in a position whose kind of purpose and role is to advocate and drive change. So this is a really fun list to make. I just want to be really clear that we're brainstorming a list of things, but we still need the organization or the person who's going to take this and drive it. So sure, this can all what we're talking about can go into a climate action plan, and the more thoughtful climate action plan we can help the Climate Crisis Committee create, that's as tempting as possible to put in front of the city council, the better. But the Climate Crisis Committee's job is not to create policy that the city council has to follow. We're really teeing this up and creating a conversation. Am I portraying that accurately?
Well, one of my suggestions is that we really can't put the burden on the city council or on the city manager. The structure as it exists now is loaded.
Right.
What we need is the equivalent of a climate czar that's an employee of the city whose responsibility it is to take this stuff and follow through.
Right, so the city could hire a sustainability director to fill that role of being a leader for the municipality, but right now, there's a gap, and it could be filled by that person, or it could be filled by a person creating a nonprofit, which we've seen happen across the state over and over, like the Freeport Climate Action Now that just spun up, or York or Portland, but I think that's an important thing for all of us to recognize out loud explicitly, because
there's a question of legal and fiduciary responsibility that we can't take on.
yes, I'm not saying that the Climate Crisis Committee ought to move into that role. I'm recognizing that you're filling an important role as it is. And that it is constrained by things that are real. I'm not asking that to change, but I think we all should just recognize that. Mary, did you have something? Yes, sorry.
There are two things that I think the city might possibly do without a sustainability coordinator. One is they could organize the budget process so that different departments are actually reflecting expenditures and income in budget categories that are labeled having to do with climate change in some way. In other words, they get income from people who use the harbor. And if they can make an argument that the harbor is or isn't adapting to climate change in some way, that might affect income, but they certainly, on the other side, the expenditure side, for instance, they're making road repairs because of washouts from climate change phenomena, that they're not, they're not budgeting that in terms of climate change. They're just saying we fixed X Robbins Road flooded and something, or White Street flooded or something like that. They don't, there's no climate change categories reflected in the budget.
Yeah.
That's one thing that they might do. I recognize that there are overlaps in these categories. You can't have separate categories, but you could put a code into your computers in the treasurer's office that might help with them. And it would make a lot of difference for them to know, because right now they have no way of tracking climate change related expenses. I had another category, but I've forgotten it, but it will come back to me.
Okay.
I'll email it.
Thank you. You talking about integrating climate thinking into the budgeting process made me think of the comprehensive planning process.
That was my other comment. The city has documents and they have ordinances that they are not enforcing.
Oh,
So, I mean, you can't exactly enforce the climate, the comprehensive plan. That's not an ordinance, but they could, for instance, enforce, say, idling ordinance, idling ordinance, which they do have the books, as I understand, on the books, as I understand. So that's one kind of thing. But coming back to the comprehensive plan, more important, they could actually pay attention to a climate, a comprehensive plan that talked about climate change.
yep. Don, anything to add on this?
I'm Fred Bowers. One thing that everyone can do is go to the council meetings and speak your mind as a member of the public. The good thing about that is you get on the record. They also take you quickly. You're right after the agenda and the minutes. So you don't have to sit around and listen to, everything else. But that's the more of that, they really pay attention to that. They hear you. I've been in enough meetings to see that they really respond to that. So we should all keep that in mind.
I went back and added that to things we can do together.
Mhm.
That's a really good point. How about our folks on Zoom? Any ideas? Thoughts? Things the municipality could do?
Well, Beverly wants
Yeah.
us to launch our own version of a climate action team.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead, Beverly. Go ahead. You're muted, Beverly. You're muted.
Sorry. Most of you probably know that I've been a member of the Climate Crisis Committee. I'm not an active member right now. I am real proud of the work of the committee, but I really I think it would be exciting to have kind of a complementary group of citizens who come together and not necessarily with a city affiliation, but working as stakeholders as part of the committee. The committee could refer to them and they could work hand in hand. But I think it would enlarge the impact of what the committee's trying to do, to have a citizen group that's really, just plugging away. Just thinking about what people said about, well, Brenda, what you said about who's going to organize these things, like tabling at events or putting together green fairs or something like that. There are people who are happy to do that. They're not on the Climate Crisis Committee. And the CCC is doing so much work on its own, but there are other people who would happily help them out.
So like a climate crisis action group that's complementing and coordinating with the climate crisis committee.
Yeah, well, at times, but as Paul Shepard said, there are climate action teams throughout the state. He mentioned Sierra Club. I've been involved with Sierra Club, and Sierra Club is helping to launch these things and helping to maintain these groups. And they're not political in any way. They're just working on community sustainability, on comprehensive plans, CAPs. There are people, as Naomi said, there are people who are coming to the once a month meetings of Local Leads the Way. It's a great way. It's a wonderful way to find out what towns are doing. And regional compacts that are forming, such as a 5-town coalition that's based in Blue Hill. They're listening to one another and they're making great strides. It's inspiring.
And they just got $125,000 to work towards that under vulnerability assessment. That's a big grant.
So that's to a network of climate action teams?
In the Blue Hole Peninsula.
That's the peninsula
Yeah.
tomorrow or,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so back to this, that idea of having a sustainability director who might be shared by a number of towns. Belfast is kind of the northernmost town on Penobscot Bay on this side of the river. But Camden, Rockport, Rockland kind of hang out down there together. So like, who are the natural town allies or
We began a discussion among Rockland, Camden, Rockport, Belfast.
yeah,
Mhm.
And you could bring Lincolnville in,
yep,
Northport, but
that
There-
whole shore,
there is
not
not
that big
seen a
here.
great deal of eagerness on the part of the city
Huh.
to collaborate with other towns. At least they haven't bitten on any of their suggestions.
Got it.
Well, collaborate in which way? Just like in.
In terms of approaching climate crisis.
Yeah,
in terms of
I
climate-
just wondered how you would talk.
We haven't got down to brass tacks. There's just been little interest in following up the discussion.
So may I add that to our list?
Sure.
Push the city to collaborate?
Regional collaboration is
Yeah.
Absolutely.
strongly encouraged on the community resilience.
That is
conference.
Now you're running into history, basically. I mean, Camden and Rockport were originally one city.
Yeah,
Let's take that for just an example. So
Yeah.
they're naturals together. Now, when they're right next door to each other.
right, but in terms,
Rockland is a big industrial town, but Belfast was and Rockland's in a different county.
Yeah.
Belfast. Belfast has been through history a dominant town, but at the same time as it gathered all the county towns together as the Shire town, it created a lot of animosity between the haves and the have-nots. The
Yeah.
haves were the merchants in Belfast who owned the ships and the warehouses and all the apparatus of the economy, and the other people in Waldo County were just the suppliers of raw materials.
Right.
And so, I mean, Belfast is a certain.
It's a monadnock.
And Belfast became very proud of being different from
Yeah.
Camden and Rockport and Rockland, and from the inland towns in Waldo County. So they've had a long history of being independent and pretty rich, and will do things our way, and people will have to come along.
Right.
But you can't, I mean, I think regional cooperation would be great,
Mhm.
but in the same way that we can't overcome, we have a very hard time overcoming people who don't have as much money as people in Belfast. We have different class levels. They're hard to overcome, they're not here in the room. So we have a hard time overcoming the history, the class levels of towns with respect to other towns.
So
But we're
that's-
not unique in that.
Well, that's where I
You
was
were just
going
saying,
too.
yeah, we're
Is this is the age of Zoom.
Yeah.
You don't have to collaborate just with the people who are next door to you. Are there other, I mean, what you're describing, I would imagine is true in not exactly the same, but there are other towns that have a similar history for their region.
Right, like York, let's say, for example, they
Yeah,
struggled, they worked together and created a climate action plan. Their nonprofit worked with their city and they created something, and it was not easy. It was bumpy. I mean, the woman comes to Local Leads the Way every time and shares. It's amazing. They worked at it.
It might be really fascinating. If anyone knows Colin Woodard, have you read the book, The Lobster Coast?
Yes.
Which is such a great kind of summary of the history of Maine and an explanation of local control and school districts, among other things.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a fascinating
Yeah.
look at the state. But to think about how that history is either accelerating or impeding climate action would be a really fascinating article for him to write. And maybe while he was doing that, he could find us a partner town to work with.
That's a great idea.
I think you should suggest that he read that.
I think we really need something like that to develop leadership.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay. We have 12 minutes. We did hear a lot about what individuals can do. Maybe we should think for a moment about the values that we were talking about. So this community, and these are things that people on June 14th, which is the first of these conversations that we had. These were the notions that people brought forward as we're starting to talk about climate action plans. We don't want this to just work for people who have the means to buy themselves solutions to some of these challenges. We want to make sure it works for everyone in our community. We want to balance human needs, human infrastructure with conservation and the environment and ecosystems. And we want to consider how we connect with other organizations, whether it's other social services organizations or other ecosystems, but be aware of ourselves as a community within a county, within a region. Just thinking about those make you think differently, or have any other ideas to add to things we can do together, things we want the municipality to do? The one thing that I would say, and I'm part of this project, I don't live here, so I'm out there on a limb. It does feel like taking advantage of what A Climate to Thrive is doing in terms of navigating that somewhat confusing kind of opportunity space that the state is offering. That's the VIL, what is it? Whatever the building infrastructure, I don't remember. Bipartisan, right, bipartisan infrastructure law. And the Inflation Reduction Act. And all of these different, these weirdly named bills and all the money associated with them and all the opportunities, but what do you have to do to qualify to compete for this versus what are things people can go after alone? Like making sense of that space so that the organizations that are providing services to low-income residents of Belfast or to individuals who might take advantage of that themselves don't have to do that, figuring out what the heck all of this means work. It feels like taking a bit, if they're gonna do that kind of navigation organization space, to take that and make it available here would be easy and a huge value.
I think that's what the whole GoPIF resiliency project is about, is having us 1 to 5 towns hire a service provider.
Yeah.
And I know Barbara's looking into that now. Because that sort of person helps you navigate the whole construct.
Right.
Right, and they
So-
will allow one individual towns. You don't always have to be partners. That's sort of changed.
Oh,
Yeah, and if you look at the list of the people that just got it, it's amazing. The money that just was distributed.
so the reason I was suggesting borrow what A Climate to Thrive is doing
Yeah,
was because it feels like there's been some sticking points in the way of Belfast applying to become part of that community resiliency program. Because it's not really clear
right.
what needs to be done in Belfast in order for Belfast to qualify to apply to that program.
Well, and also
Like,
the
we
money
need it-
coming available isn't necessarily only gonna be distributed through the Community Resiliency Partnership. My understanding, because I went to the presentation the other day at Local Leads the Way about all the money, where it's going and how you're gonna be able to apply for it. But you have to be organized in it. So like if we become, if I can have a way to promote the pamphlet that Climate to Thrive has written up about accessing the money, we can encourage nonprofits to do that here, and individuals too. The money is going to be available to individuals and municipalities and nonprofits. But what Ross just said, it wasn't going to be probably until the end of 2023. Did I hear him wrong?
I think part of it was coming up
Yeah.
later. In
But people
2023.
need to be ready for it, basically, like, like communities. It doesn't only just have to be the city municipality.
So maybe a thing that we could do, somebody in this room could do, is get in touch with that Brian Ambret, who's in charge of the community
Yeah.
resiliency program, and just ask. Because it is interesting. Belfast is a strange town, that there aren't natural partners around with whom Belfast can collaborate. So what does Belfast need to do in order to be part of that? Or what are the things that Belfast can do if it's not part of that?
Right.
And getting those answers.
They also collaborate in the school district.
Yeah,
You have natural setups already.
That's true.
the
But
neighboring towns.
Belfast, right, the schools that are part, or the towns that are part of the Belfast school are those towns that, as you said, are kind of the shire towns for Belfast. So there's not a feeling of equal partners coming together to work together. It's Belfast has always been high and mighty, and they have the school, and we send our kids there.
And the money,
So-
the source of the money is completely different from
Right.
the town hiring staff or
So-
the economic, the money flow, the cash flow
Right.
is completely different for these schools than it is for the municipal.
Yeah, it's a different budget.
And I think you both are making a good point. There's reasons that Belfast might go forward by itself. And if we are gonna find communities with whom to work, looking at the towns who are participating in the Belfast School District would be a logical place to start, and maybe an aspiration.
Yes, I think that's
But
a good
at-
point.
At the end of the day, it's the city that applies for it. It's not the climate
Right.
crisis
But
committee.
if you remember, last
Yeah, I
September,
remember.
we did apply for it.
Right,
We had the Sierra Club
right,
offering to
Right.
act on our behalf.
Right.
And the state rejected the application.
right. Well,
On what-
did they tell you why? I mean, a lot of you just didn't make the cut, but
Right.
they're doing it again and again
Yeah.
and again.
Yeah.
Just, you'll get in. But I will say that nonprofits, larger nonprofits, like a Climate to Thrive. I think they could apply for that. Am I right, Paul?
I think so.
Yeah, so they're large enough, like in York, I can't remember the name of their nonprofit there. They applied for it, and got it.
As a party or as a service provider?
I don't remember. I think as a service provider, I can't remember. It's a little confusing, the whole thing.
So who's gonna talk to Brian Ambret? Excellent. Or have
I
you,
can talk to Brian.
do you want a note keeper on the call with you so you can just talk to Brian and somebody else can take notes? Or record it, or do you want to just do it and come back, report back to us?
I think I'd like to just do it and report back. because
Perfect.
Brian isn't kind of. I know Brian, I've worked with him before.
Okay,
He's an excellent manager.
great.
And what an excellent managers do not have long phone calls.
All right,
They want to understand what the question is, and then they refer the person, the caller, to various sources of information. But provide the answers.
I'm gonna write you down. Barbara's gonna make this phone call.
You have an action.
Excellent. So that was the one thing we just added, and the second thing was about somehow figuring out, making it really clear and easy to Belfast residents who might take action, what they can do and what money is available to support them doing it. And similarly for Belfast or for organizations in Belfast.
Right, the staff.
But to make it, which maybe drives us right back to that weatherization campaign idea, because it made it so visible, it was so clear. I love that idea of the, of thinking about it like weatherization concierges, the energy concierge who kind of knows more than you do and helps you find the right contractor and helps you figure out what's gonna be the best thing for you to do in your house instead of on your vacation. I've never actually had a concierge help me in a hotel. I think that sounds really fun. Okay, make sense of incentives and opportunities.
So it's 7:58, and I have a question.
Yeah, we're going.
It sounds like you think that we should have another meeting next month to follow up on this.
We're 2 steps ahead of you this time.
Maybe,
What did you just
I
say?
said we're 2 steps ahead of you because we've already.
I think it'd be a great idea. I mean, we have some ideas moving here.
Do you want to have a conversation on the same topics? We were gonna go to the.
Bill,
next
get another
topic.
topic, and
Yeah.
we'll keep the
Yeah,
climate action
we
plan.
have to need to do another one. We had one in October. December. We have 2 dates penciled in for the end of January, beginning of February.
January 26th and February 7th are the 2 dates we're exploring for a meeting on. Oh, geez, it's on.
Yeah, he left, he couldn't stay. Transportation was the next topic we were gonna talk.
Which leads me, Jerry Brand, to one of my favorite concerns. Let's say we're very successful in selling everybody a heat pumps. And so every citizen in Belfast that owns a home that sees its electric usage go up by about 25%. And then we're successful in selling them on electric cars. And so those people that adopt an electric car, plug it in, and then their utility usage goes up another 25%.
Yeah.
There's a huge disconnect between
Generation.
a capacity on the net. We have no control over that. That's the closest regulator is the ISO. The State Public Utility Commission would be the people that would have to, start
Yeah.
saying, let's start thinking about how to expand the utility capacity.
So we thought you might ask that question. And this is what we thought, and I'd love to just kind of truth check it, reality check it with you. That those conversations about the grid is even a step beyond the like telling Belfast, the city, what to do. And that people like Ross and the governor's energy office are really the ones who better be thinking about that, and I suspect already are.
Well, yeah. I
So
can't
for our
find that, but, yeah.
community, well, it's a good, I really encourage you to take Ross up on his offer. Give him a phone call or send him an email and ask him that question,
Well,
because I think it's important. But I don't think it's necessarily a great conversation topic for residents, because we
Jerry
aren't
has-
so best,
Jerry has another idea.
we aren't the best ones
It's
to
called
be.
microgrid.
Well, yeah, but
Okay,
that's
but
also in the
again,
weeds a little bit. I mean,
did-
that's like further down the road. No,
No,
a smaller grid, making like.
microgrids.
that means everybody has to work together.
Yeah,
Is this something you're interested in?
I just, from what I understand is that that's how it used to always be until they
Yeah.
consolidated and
Right.
got a better idea.
And we're a long, long way from getting everybody having heat pumps and electric cars.
It's a problem that you're gonna be, at some point, you're gonna be a victim of your own success.
Of course, and your answer was perfect.
this is a problem that will develop by success of our program.
Right,
Right,
And it
right,
be a
this will be the
gradual
high
problem.
class
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Yes, you can adjust it.
yeah,
But
agreed.
really, I strongly encourage you to, so I'm gonna give you a homework assignment, Jerry. So Barbara already has one, but really, follow up with Ross about that and make, just to ensure, because it'd be great for all of us to know that Sarah's assumption that somebody else is taking care of it and thinking about that is true. And that we don't have to worry about it, or maybe it's something that we need to start encouraging folks to take
Advocating
on.
for, yeah, and I'm sure,
Right.
yeah.
But we do think that transportation is another topic, because we all drive cars or ride bicycles or take public transportation and need to get from home to work, to school, to shopping, to whatever. That there is an opportunity to have a conversation about personal transportation, public transportation, what the future might look like, et cetera.
Well,
So-
actually, there is a personal thing about this whole thing.
Okay,
The largest, central panel in your house is 200 amp panel right now. Once you exceed that capacity, you're into a whole nother ballgame. I mean, there's a lot of stuff involved here.
no, I hear you, and, well, I hear you, and I want to be really honest that you start talking about that, and I'm like, I just don't even know enough to have that conversation. But I know that I moved from point A to point B, and I know that it's after 8 o'clock, and I want you all to go home. Because we told you we'd be done at 8 and it's after 8. And we really appreciate your commitment to these conversations and being here and sharing your ideas, and we want to respect your time. So the current plan right now is to have a conversation about transportation at the end of January or early February. And then we're hoping in March to have some sort of a bigger event. Maybe a reprise of the climate symposium that we had with organizations in the region who are active in one way, shape, or form around everything from food security to home security in terms of, a roof over your head and a safe place to be. It's so broadly connected to climate change, but a bigger conversation to think about leadership or collective action or something. So if that idea is tempting to you and you'd like to be part of putting that together, get in touch with Brenda, because we're just at the very beginnings of hatching that plan. So if you want to be part of a steering committee to put it together, and we're thinking sometime in March.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here.